Lagos sparkled beneath the afternoon sun, the city's vibrancy a reflection of its diversity. From the glitzy high-rises of Victoria Island to the crowded markets of Oshodi, Lagos was a city of contrasts, and Mandy embodied that duality perfectly. At 26, she lived in the lap of luxury, shielded from the hardships of the world by the wealth of her parents. The sprawling mansion in Lekki Phase 1 was her fortress, and her life had been a series of carefully orchestrated events, each one designed to preserve the family's pristine reputation. Mandy, who is the only child of her parents, was beautiful, with a chocolate complexion that shimmered like the velvet in the sunlight. But behind her almond-shaped eyes, there was a fire, a restless spirit yearning for something beyond the designer clothes, endless parties, and the polished suitors who bored her with their predictable charm. Mandy was tired of her gilded cage, suffocated by the monotony of privilege. One Saturday, a whisper of rebellion pushed her to follow her friends into the heart of Lagos, where life pulsed with an intensity unknown to the manicured streets of Lekki. They ventured to Oshodi, a place where she only heard about, usually in the context of warnings. Her parents often spoke of it in hushed tones, a world so far removed from their own. Oshodi was alive, chaotic in its beauty. The streets were packed with people, each with a purpose, each in a hurry. Vendors shouted out their wares. The air was thick with the scent of roasted corn and sweat, and the noise was a cacophony of life. Mandy was overwhelmed. This was a place where every day was a struggle, yet everyone seemed more alive than anyone she had ever known. And then she saw him. Jazzy was standing on top of the danfo, the yellow bus that was a lifeline for many Lagosians. He was shouting at the top of his lungs, calling out the bus route, his voice cutting through the chaos with an authority that demanded attention. Mandy's eyes were drawn to him instantly. He is tall, muscular, and framed a striking contrast to the bus he rode. His skin was dark, dripping with sweat, and his eyes sharp and bright, which seemed to pierce through the crowd, locking onto hers for a brief, electrifying moment. I should have looked away, she thought. This was not a man from her world, yet she found herself moving closer, compelled by a force she couldn't understand. Fine girl, where you dey go? Jazzy's voice was smooth, with a hint of a tease. He was used to getting people on his bus, but this time, he wanted something else. He wanted her to notice him. Mandy hesitated, her heart pounding. This is insane. She didn't know him. He didn't know her. They had nothing in common. But in that moment, logic was drowned out by the rush of adrenaline. I'm headed to Lekki Phase 1. How much? She found herself asking. The words were slipping out before she could stop them. Jazzy grinned, showing a perfect set of white teeth, saying, fine girl, no worry. Mama, everywhere good, no worry. She smiled, a saucy smile that hinted at mischief. She knew she could walk away, return to her world of certainty and comfort. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped onto the bus, into Jazzy's world and into a whirlwind of emotions that could change her life forever. Mandy had never felt anything like this before. Jazzy was himself, different, raw, and real. Their first encounter turned into another and another until they were meeting every week in secret. Each time they met, it was as if the world around them disappeared, leaving just the two of them in their bubble of passion and connection. Jazzy was everything for her. He was rough around the edges, but he had a heart that beat with sincerity. His life was hard, but he faced it with a strength and resilience that Mandy couldn't help but admire. With him, she felt alive in a way she had never imagined possible. They spent hours talking, Jazzy telling her stories of his childhood, of the streets he grew up on, and the hustle that defined his life. Mandy, in turn, would share bits of her own world, though she left out many details, afraid that too much truth would break the spell they were under. She loved how Jazzy treated her like an equal, not like the spoiled, rich girl she had always been. With him, she was just Mandy, a woman discovering herself. But as much as she loved their time together, she knew it couldn't last. The worlds they came from were too different, and the stakes were too high. Her parents started noticing some changes in her. The unexplained absences, the dreamy looks in her eyes, and the detachment from the things that used to matter to her. They began to probe, asking questions she dodged with increasing difficulty. Then came a day that her parents introduced her to Adewale, a wealthy businessman's son who was everything Jazzy was not. He was well polished, well mannered, and perfectly matched for her in every conceivable way. The arrangement was all set, and Mandy was expected to fall in line. But all she could do was to think of Jazzy, his smile, his laugh, the way he made her feel free in a way she has never been before. The pressure mounted, and Mandy felt herself suffocating under the weight of expectations. Her parents' voices droned on about duty, tradition, and the importance of maintaining their family status. But in her heart, she knew she couldn't let go of Jazzy, not without a fight. The secret couldn't last forever. One evening, after another meeting with Jazzy, Mandy returned home to find her parents waiting for her in the living room. The look in their eyes told everything. Somehow they knew. The confrontation was brutal. Her mother's voice trembled with disbelief, while her father's anger simmered just beneath the surface. How could she, their precious daughter, how could she throw away everything they built for her? How could she dent their name by associating with a boss conductor, a man from the streets? Mandy tried to explain, but her words fell on deaf ears. To them, this wasn't love. It was a rebellion, a face that needed to be crushed before it did the irreparable damage. They demanded that she ends it, that she focuses on her future, the future they had already planned for her. But Mandy was torn. How could she end something that felt so real, so right? And yet, how could she stand against her family, the people who had given her everything? So Jazzy sensed the impending doom. He saw the darkness in Mandy's eyes, felt the distance growing between them. He knew this couldn't go on, not without destroying both of them. So one evening, as they sat on the edge of the lagoon, watching the sunset, Jazzy made the hardest decision of his life. "Mandy," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We can't keep doing this. I can't keep hurting you." Mandy's heart clenched. "What are you saying, Jazzy?" He looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. "I'm saying that we are from different worlds, and no matter how much we care about each other, those worlds will never accept us together. I love you, Mandy, but I can't keep hurting you. I can't let you throw your life away for me." Tears welled up in Mandy's eyes as she shook her head.
"Jazzy, no. Don't do this. We can find a way. Don't do this. Don't go."
Jazzy was resolute. He stood up, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You deserve more than this. More than what I can give you. Go back to your family, Mandy. Live the life you're meant to live. And maybe someday you will find someone who can give you everything you deserve." Mandy clung to him, her heart breaking into pieces, saying,
"But I don't want someone else. I want you."
Jazzy kissed her forehead, his lips lingering for a moment before he pulled away. "I will always love you, Mandy, but this is goodbye." And with that, he walked away, leaving Mandy standing there, shattered and alone. The days that followed were a blur. Mandy went through the emotions, her heart hollow, her mind numb. Her parents, thinking she had finally come back to her senses, began planning her engagement to Adewale. But inside, Mandy felt nothing but emptiness. On the day of her engagement, Mandy stood in front of the mirror, dressed in a beautiful gown, the picture of perfection. But as she looked at her reflection, all she could see was a shell of the person she had once been. The ceremony was grand. The guests were delighted, but Mandy's heart wasn't in it. As she exchanged pleasantries with Adewale, her mind drifted to Jazzy, to his smile, his laughter, and the way he made her feel so alive. She realized that no matter what she did, she would never be the same again. Mandy slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner where she could be alone with her thoughts. She gazed out at the city lights, shimmering in the distance, as she reminisces on the memories she shared with the man she truly loved. Mandy had made her choice. She had chosen the life her parents wanted for her, the life that was expected of her. But as she looked into Adewale's eyes, she knew that a part of her would always belong to Jazzy, the man who had shown her a different world, and who had loved her enough to let her go.